When Rachel moved back to Portland after years of living in Chicago, she thought the hardest part would be adjusting to the quiet. Her life in the city had been busy, full of constant work and noise. And returning to her late parents' old home felt like stepping into another lifetime. The wooden porch still creaked the same way it did when she was a teenager. And the maple tree in the yard still dropped its leaves across the walkway every fall. Yet everything around her felt heavier now, quieter, lonelier. Her husband Mark was a good man, patient, gentle, and always trying to make things right. But the last 2 years had pulled them apart in ways neither wanted to admit. His job as an engineer demanded constant travel, sometimes weeks away at a time. What used to be quick airport hugs and long late-night calls had slowly turned into silence and polite check-ins. They loved each other, but distance had turned that love into something fragile, like glass that could crack at any moment. So when her sister Lily called one evening and said, "Evan's starting college near you. Could you look out for him? Maybe let him visit sometimes." Rachel had said yes immediately. Her nephew had always been like the younger brother she never had, curious, clever, and full of questions about life. She hadn't seen him much since he turned 18. And the idea of family around the house again felt like a gift. Evan's first visit was on a Saturday afternoon. He arrived carrying a backpack, a box of books, and the same bright smile she remembered from his childhood. "Aunt Rachel," he said, hugging her with the ease of family. He smelled faintly of coffee and rain. "Wow, this place hasn't changed at all." They spent the day catching up, cooking pasta, and talking about his classes. He was studying architecture and spoke with excitement about design, cities, and the feeling of building something that lasts. She saw a lot of herself in him, the same ambition, the same longing to prove something. That night after he left, Rachel found herself smiling again for the first time in weeks. She realized how much she'd missed simple company, someone to talk to, someone to laugh with. Days went by and his visits became more frequent. He'd stop by after class sometimes just to grab a meal or do laundry, and she'd make coffee while they talked. Mark knew, of course. She told him about Evan's visits over their occasional phone calls. He was glad, said it was good she had family nearby. But still, the calls were short and the distance between them grew longer. One afternoon, while a storm rattled the windows, Evan dropped by unexpectedly. His face looked tired, pale. "Can I stay here tonight?" he asked quietly. "My apartment lost power and finals are next week. I can't afford to fall behind." "Course," Rachel said. "You don't even have to ask." She made him tea, set up the guest room, and listened while he vented about exams and stress. She found herself comforting him the way she used to when he was a little boy, reminding him that setbacks don't last forever. That evening, she sat by the piano in the living room, playing soft notes against the sound of the rain. It was something she hadn't done in months. Music had always helped her breathe, helped her feel. Evan came down the stairs quietly, listening. "I didn't know you played this well," he said. Rachel smiled. "It's just something I do when I need to think." "It's beautiful," he said. And for a moment, she felt seen, not as someone's wife or someone's aunt, but simply as herself. The next morning, she woke early, the storm finally gone. She made breakfast and left for the grocery store, leaving a note on the counter for Evan. When she came back, her husband's car was in the driveway. She froze. Mark hadn't said he'd be home. She walked inside, bag still in hand, to find him sitting at the kitchen table, his coat still wet from travel. Evan was across from him, looking nervous. "Rachel," Mark said, his tone calm but sharp, "I just got back. Evan said you'd been helping him out a lot." She smiled carefully. "Of course. He's family." Mark nodded, but there was something behind his eyes she couldn't read. He wasn't angry, just distant, as though he'd walked into a story he didn't quite understand. The tension lingered for days. Mark stayed home longer than usual, working remotely. He didn't question her directly, but his silences spoke enough. When Evan visited again later that week, he could sense the change. "He thinks something's wrong, doesn't he?" Evan asked softly as they washed dishes. "He's just tired," she replied, though the words felt thin. Later that evening, Rachel sat in the living room, sketching on her notepad. She had begun designing again, something she hadn't done since her art school days. Drawing helped her think. Evan came over, saw her sketches, and said, "You should do this more. You're amazing." She laughed, brushing him off, but the encouragement warmed her. Then, just as she was packing away her drawings, the door opened. Mark had returned early from the store. He froze for a second, seeing them close together by the table, sketches scattered around, laughter midair. His expression hardened slightly, though he said nothing. Evan excused himself soon after. When the door closed, the silence between Rachel and Mark felt endless. "I didn't realize he was here again," Mark said quietly. "He came by to help me with something," she answered. "I see." He paused. "Rachel, I know you wouldn't do anything wrong, but I feel like I've been gone too long." His words carried no accusation, only sorrow. Rachel didn't know what to say. She looked at him, realizing that the man she'd once built dreams with was now a stranger standing in her kitchen. That night, she couldn't sleep. The rain returned, tapping against the window like questions she couldn't answer. She thought about how easily misunderstanding could grow between people, how distance didn't always come from miles, but from silence. The next morning, Evan stopped by again, unaware of the tension. Rachel tried to act normal, but the unease lingered. They sat on the couch with coffee when suddenly the front door creaked open again. "Rachel." Mark's voice came from the hallway. He had forgotten his laptop earlier and had come back to get it. Evan stood up quickly, startled, knocking over his mug. Coffee spilled across the carpet. Rachel bent down to clean it, her hands trembling. Mark entered just in time to see the scene. His wife on the floor, Evan kneeling beside her, both reaching for the same towel. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. The silence was thick, the kind that could break something fragile if held too long. "I should go," Evan muttered, stepping back. He grabbed his jacket and left without meeting Mark's eyes. The door closed behind him, and Rachel sat there frozen, feeling a kind of dread she couldn't explain. Mark sighed quietly. "Rachel," he said after a long pause, "I think we need to talk." She looked up at him, eyes filled with tears she hadn't realized were there. "I know," she whispered, but before they could speak another word, thunder rolled outside, and with it came the memory of every moment they had let pass unspoken. That night, Rachel sat alone at the window, her reflection blurred against the glass. The words Mark had said earlier kept replaying in her head. "I know you wouldn't do anything wrong." She wished she could believe it as easily as he had said it. The morning after the misunderstanding, the house felt heavier than ever. Rachel woke up to the smell of coffee, but she didn't move from bed right away. She could hear Mark in the kitchen, moving quietly as if not to disturb her. It wasn't anger that filled the air, it was something worse, distance. The kind that grows quietly, without argument, until two people find themselves living like strangers under the same roof. When she finally walked in, he gave a small smile, polite and tired. "I made you some coffee," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes told a different story. "Thanks," she replied, sitting down across from him. Neither spoke for a long time. The only sound was the soft hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock on the wall. Finally, Mark sighed and looked at her. "Rachel, I know I've been gone a lot. I know it's been hard, but I feel like I don't even know what's going on anymore." She looked down, tracing the rim of her cup. "There's nothing going on, Mark. You know me better than that." He nodded slowly. "I do. But when I came in yesterday, it just looked strange, and I hate that I even thought twice about it." His honesty cut through her defenses. She reached across the table and placed her hand on his. "Mark, I'd never betray you. She stopped. The truth sat in her chest like a stone. "I just miss us. That's all." He squeezed her hand, his expression softening. "I miss us too." For a brief moment, it felt like a bridge had formed again, fragile but real. Later that day, Mark packed his bags for another short work trip. He kissed her on the forehead before leaving, and for the first time in weeks, she felt hope. Maybe they could still fix things. But the silence that followed after he left reminded her how much work that hope would take. That evening, Evan texted her, I'm sorry about what happened. I didn't mean to make things awkward, she replied quickly. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Take care of your exams. He didn't answer right away. Then, after a pause, he sent another message. You've always been the person I look up to, Aunt Rachel. I hate that I caused you trouble. Rachel smiled faintly at her phone. There was innocence in his words, a kind of affection that came from respect, not anything improper. Still, she couldn't ignore how easily small moments could be misunderstood. Over the next week, she focused on work, trying to fill the silence in the house with productivity. But late at night, when the wind brushed against the window and the rooms echoed with emptiness, her thoughts returned to that awkward afternoon, the look in Mark's eyes, the confusion, the unspoken worry. Then, on Thursday, Evan called. His voice was low and tense. Aunt Rachel, can I come over? Just for a bit. Is everything okay? She asked. He hesitated. Not really. I had an argument with a friend, and I just need to clear my head. Rachel didn't think twice. Of course. Come over. When he arrived, it was late, the streetlights glowing outside, rain falling in soft sheets. He stood at the doorway, his jacket soaked, his expression tired. Sorry, he said. I didn't know where else to go. You don't need to apologize, she said, handing him a towel. You're always welcome here. They sat in the living room, the fireplace flickering between them. Evan stared into the flames. You ever feel like you're trying so hard to be someone everyone expects you to be, but you're just tired? Rachel nodded slowly. Every day. He smiled weakly. I guess we're both a little lost then. For a while, they just sat there in silence. Then Evan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I heard what Mark said that day. I shouldn't have stayed so long. I didn't mean to cause any problems. Evan, you didn't, she said firmly. Mark S. Just tired, we both are. But it's not your fault. He looked up, eyes filled with concern. You and Uncle Mark are going to be okay, right? She wanted to say yes, but the words stuck in her throat. I don't know, she admitted softly. That honesty hung between them like a quiet truth neither wanted to face. After a few minutes, Evan stood. I should go. It's getting late. She walked him to the door and just as he turned to leave, said, You know, Aunt Rachel, you're one of the strongest people I know. I hope Mark realizes how lucky he is. His words struck her deeper than he probably intended. Thank you, she said, her voice barely a whisper. After he left, Rachel stood by the window, watching the rain blur the streetlights. She wasn't sure what hurt more, the loneliness or the realization that someone outside her marriage could see her more clearly than her own husband did. The next morning, Mark called from the road. His tone was warmer than before. Hey, he said, I was thinking maybe when I'm back we could take a trip. Just the two of us. Get away from all the noise. Rachel smiled, relief washing over her. I'd like that. But before they could talk longer, his voice cut off. Static filled the line, then silence. She tried calling back, but the call didn't go through. The storm outside had worsened, and the news later reported heavy flooding near the highway. For hours, she sat by the phone, waiting. Finally, around midnight, the phone rang again. Rachel, Mark said, his voice faint but steady. I'm fine. Just stopped at a motel. Roads are closed. She exhaled, tears of relief slipping down her face. You scared me. I'm sorry, he said softly. I didn't mean to. That night, she barely slept, thinking about how fragile everything was, how one misunderstanding, one missed call, one bad day could make or break a relationship. A few days later, Mark returned home. The first thing he did was hug her. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet, genuine embrace that said more than words could. I've been thinking a lot, he said. About us, about how I let work take over everything. I don't want to lose you, Rachel. She looked at him, eyes wet. Then stop being gone all the time. Be here, really here. He nodded. I will. For a few weeks, it felt like things were finally changing. They cooked together, laughed more, and began to rebuild what had been lost. But one afternoon, while Rachel was cleaning the kitchen, her phone buzzed, a message from Evan. Hey, Aunt Rachel. Just wanted to thank you for being there that night. You always make things feel calmer. It was innocent enough. But when Mark saw the message pop up on her screen, his expression tightened again. He didn't say anything right away, but she could feel the shift, that same quiet distance returning later. As they sat on the couch, he finally asked, "Do you still talk to him a lot?" She frowned. "He's family, Mark. Of course I do." "I know," he said, looking away. "It's just, after everything, maybe give it a little space." Rachel felt a flash of hurt. "Space? He's my nephew, Mark. He comes to me when he needs advice. That's all." He nodded but didn't respond. The silence grew again, and she realized how hard it was to rebuild trust once it had cracked, even slightly. That night she sat on the porch under the stars, thinking about how easily people misunderstood each other, how love could exist right beside doubt. She didn't blame Mark. In his place, she might have felt the same. But it broke her heart that after years of loyalty, one innocent moment could make everything feel uncertain. When she finally went inside, Mark was asleep on the couch, the TV still playing softly. She turned it off, covered him with a blanket, and whispered, "We'll find our way back. I promise." Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain again, a quiet reminder that even storms eventually pass, but they always leave a mark. The weeks after the quiet argument were strangely calm. Rachel went about her days as if life had finally settled, but underneath her heart carried the weight of unspoken things. Mark was trying. She could see it in the small gestures, the extra effort to be home on time, the way he now lingered at breakfast instead of rushing out. But something between them had shifted forever. Something subtle yet deeply real. It was early spring when everything took a new turn. Rachel had decided to host a small family gathering, something to bring warmth back into the house. She invited her sister, Evan, and a few cousins. The house felt alive again that weekend, laughter echoing through the rooms, the smell of home-cooked food filling the air, and the old piano in the corner playing soft melodies from their childhood. Evan arrived last, carrying a small bouquet. "For you," he said, handing it to her with a shy smile. "Thank you," Rachel said warmly. "They're beautiful." Mark greeted him with polite warmth, though there was still that invisible wall between them. Rachel noticed but didn't comment. She just hoped that time would heal what words hadn't. The evening went smoothly at first. Stories were shared, memories revived, and for a while everything felt simple again. But later that night, after everyone had eaten and most guests had left, only Rachel, Mark, and Evan remained in the living room. The rain outside had returned, tapping gently against the windows. Mark got up to clear the dishes. "You two sit. I'll take care of this," he said, almost too quickly. Rachel felt a twinge of guilt watching him when he disappeared into the kitchen. Evan leaned closer and whispered, "He's trying, you know." "Uncle Mark. He really is." Rachel looked at him, surprised. "You think so?" He nodded. "I can tell. He looks at you like he's scared to lose you." Her chest tightened at the truth in those words. "We've been through a lot," she said quietly, "but I want to believe we'll be okay." Evan smiled softly. "You will be." But just as he said that, Mark re-entered, and from his point of view, all he saw was Rachel and Evan sitting close, her hand briefly touching his in gratitude. It was nothing more than a simple human gesture. But to someone still battling insecurity, it looked like history repeating itself. He froze at the doorway. For a second, no one spoke. The sound of the rain seemed louder than ever. Rachel noticed him first. "Mark, you okay?" He blinked, his voice even. "Yeah, just thought I saw something." Evan quickly stood. "Uncle Mark, I should probably get going anyway. It's getting late." Mark didn't stop him. He just nodded, forcing a small smile. After the door closed, the silence returned. Rachel turned to him. "You think I'd do something wrong again, don't you?" he sighed. "No. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration in his eyes. I don't know why I keep feeling like I'm losing you." Rachel walked closer. "You're not losing me, Mark. You're losing trust in yourself, in us. And that's what's tearing us apart." That night, neither of them slept much. They didn't fight, but they didn't talk either. The next morning, Mark left early for a meeting. Rachel stayed behind, her thoughts tangled between anger, sadness, and exhaustion. Later that afternoon, as she sat on the porch sipping coffee, Evan's mother called. "Rachel, I wanted to thank you for having him over last night," she said cheerfully. "He came home happier than I've seen him in months." Rachel smiled faintly. "He's a good kid. He just needed some family time." But then her sister added something that made her pause. "He mentioned he felt bad again for causing tension before. Said he hopes you and Mark worked things out." Rachel's heart softened. Despite all the awkwardness, Evan had only ever meant well. 2 days later, Mark came home early, unexpectedly. He looked calmer this time, more grounded. "Can we talk?" he asked. They sat in the living room where so many of their unspoken feelings seemed to live. Mark took a deep breath. "I've been thinking. I realized something. It's not you I don't trust. It's me. I've been so focused on work, on success, that I forgot what really mattered. I left you alone too often and then blamed you for the distance I created." Rachel's eyes filled. "Mark," he continued, "I saw you with Evan last night, and for a moment I felt that same jealousy again. But then I remembered how patient you've been. You could have given up, but you didn't. You stayed." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Because I love you, Mark. I never stopped." He reached for her hand and held it tightly. "Then let's stop letting fear win. Let's start over. No secrets, no distance." That night they cooked dinner together, laughing softly as they burned the first batch of pasta. It wasn't a magical fix, but it was a start, a real one. A few weeks later, Evan stopped by again, this time with his girlfriend, Sarah. He looked happier, more grown up. And when he saw Rachel and Mark together, he smiled knowingly. "You two look better," he said. Mark grinned. "We're getting there." Evan chuckled. "Told you everything would work out." That simple comment made Rachel realize how much had changed. The misunderstandings, the doubt, the silence, all of it had led them back to a deeper kind of love. One that wasn't built on perfection, but forgiveness. As the evening ended and everyone left, Rachel walked Mark to the porch. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink as the sun dipped low. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "You know," she whispered, "for a while I thought we were done." Mark wrapped his arm around her. "We almost were. But sometimes you have to lose sight of something to really see it again." They stood there quietly, listening to the distant sound of cars and the soft chirping of crickets. Later that week, Rachel received a message from Evan. It read, "Thank you for everything, Aunt Rachel. I'm glad you and Uncle Mark are okay. I learned something from you that love isn't about being perfect. It's about being patient." She smiled as she read it, realizing that despite everything, the experience had brought them all closer. The misunderstanding that once threatened to break everything had instead taught them all what real love looked like. Fragile, flawed, but worth fighting for. Months passed, and their lives slowly returned to a peaceful rhythm. Mark was home more often. They took that trip they'd once talked about, a quiet cabin by a lake in Vermont. There, surrounded by calm water and pine trees, they found a new kind of peace. One morning, as they sat by the water, Rachel turned to him. "Do you ever think about how close we came to losing each other?" He nodded. "Every day. But I also think about how lucky I am that we didn't." She smiled softly. "Then maybe that's what love really is, choosing to stay, even when it's hard." He took her hand. "Then I'll keep choosing you." A gentle breeze rippled across the lake, carrying their laughter through the trees. The pain of the past hadn't vanished, but it no longer defined them. It had shaped them, made them stronger, more human, more grateful. Months later, when Evan graduated from college, he sent them a handwritten note with his invitation. Inside it, he wrote, "You both taught me something about love and forgiveness. I hope I can carry that with me always. Rachel and Mark attended his graduation, sitting proudly among the crowd. When Evan spotted them, he waved with genuine warmth. In that moment, all the awkwardness, all the tension, seemed like a distant memory. As they drove home that night, Mark reached over and took her hand. "I think we're finally okay," he said softly. Rachel looked out at the passing lights and smiled. "Yeah," she whispered, "we are." And for the first time in a long time, she believed it completely. Lily Thompson had always considered herself a person in control of her life. She had a stable marriage with Mark, a man who was thoughtful, kind, and dependable. Their life together in Portland was comfortable, cozy apartment, weekend brunches, and quiet evenings with takeout and movies. But lately, comfort had started to feel like a cage. The laughter they once shared had grown sparse, replaced by polite conversation and routine. She felt a subtle distance growing between them, quiet emptiness that she couldn't quite name. Her best friend, Emma Roberts, had been her anchor for over a decade. They met in college and instantly clicked, bonded over late-night study sessions and shared secrets. Emma had always been confident, charismatic, the type of person who lit up a room just by walking in. Over the years, Lily had relied on her more than anyone to vent frustrations, share her dreams, and even to discreetly seek advice about her marriage. Emma had a way of seeing things that Lily couldn't see herself, a perspective that was sometimes comforting, sometimes challenging. One Friday evening, after another quiet dinner with Mark, Lily found herself scrolling through her phone. Emma's name flashed on the screen. She had sent a casual message. "Mark seemed a little down today. Maybe he needs a friend." Lily's stomach tightened. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly, but a flutter of unease. She trusted both Mark and Emma, but something about the wording unsettled her. Was it an innocent suggestion, or did Emma see an opportunity where Lily didn't? She shook her head, trying to dismiss the thought. "I'm overthinking it," she told herself. The following weekend, Emma invited them both over for a small get-together. "Just a few friends, nothing fancy," she said, her voice light and inviting. Lily agreed, hoping a casual night would lift the tension she had been feeling at home. When they arrived, the apartment was cozy and welcoming, filled with warm lighting and soft music. People chatted, glasses clinked, and laughter filled the room. It was exactly the kind of distraction Lily thought she needed. But as the night wore on, Lily noticed something she hadn't expected. Mark and Emma were talking more animatedly than usual, leaning toward each other in ways that seemed natural but intimate at the same time. The way Mark laughed at Emma's jokes, the small gestures, a hand brushing over hers briefly, a shared smile made Lily's chest tighten. She reminded herself that they were just friends. She had seen it before, innocent interactions between people who cared for each other. But tonight, it felt different. There was a spark she couldn't ignore, a subtle energy in the way they looked at each other. Lily tried to focus on the others in the room, on conversations about work and movies, anything to distract herself. Yet every glance she cast toward the corner where Mark and Emma sat brought her stomach into knots. She felt like an outsider, watching the two people she loved most in her life share a moment she wasn't part of. And then, almost impulsively, a strange thought entered her mind. What if I just let them? She didn't know why the idea surprised her, or why it felt even remotely tempting. She told herself it wasn't jealousy, it was curiosity, a need to see for herself what this connection meant. She convinced herself it was harmless, a way to test the boundaries of trust. She quietly excused herself from the group when Mark volunteered to drive Emma home after the gathering. Lily claimed she needed to check on something outside, though in truth, she stayed by her car in the parking lot, hidden from view but within hearing distance. The drive was short, just a few blocks, but it felt like an eternity. Lily watched through the tinted windows as Mark and Emma talked, their heads close together, their gestures soft but expressive. Laughter came in low bursts, and Lily's chest tightened with a mixture of anxiety, curiosity, and a strange thrill. She hadn't expected to feel so many conflicting emotions at once. She told herself that she would not intervene, that she would simply observe. But deep down, a tiny voice whispered that what she was doing was risky emotionally, morally, spiritually. When Mark returned, Lily was still in her car. He climbed in quietly, avoiding her gaze, and started the drive back to their apartment. The silence between them was thick, uncomfortable. She could feel the tension radiating from him, a subtle awareness that something had shifted. Her heart raced, and she couldn't tell if it was from fear or anticipation. Finally, she broke the silence. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice deliberately calm. Mark glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Yeah, fine," he said, though his voice carried a hint of something unspoken. They drove home in near silence. Lily's mind was a whirlwind. Had she made a mistake? She tried to rationalize it. Nothing actually happened between Mark and Emma yet. She couldn't shake the feeling that the balance had shifted. The boundaries had subtly moved while she wasn't looking. The next few days were strange. Mark seemed distant, thoughtful, occasionally distracted. Lily noticed the small ways he had changed, the way he lingered on his phone, the subtle hesitations before answering her questions, the quiet pauses in conversations that had once been easy. She wanted to confront him, to demand clarity, but something held her back. Perhaps it was guilt for letting the night unfold as it did. Perhaps it was fear of shattering the fragile peace they had. Emma's texts didn't help. They were light, teasing, almost innocently flirtatious. "Mark smiled so much when we talked last night. Maybe he needed that more than I realized." Lily's chest tightened. She read the message over and over, trying to interpret it, trying to tell herself it was harmless. But the thought persisted by allowing them that moment. Had she unknowingly opened a door she couldn't close? Lily spent the week in a haze of emotion. She questioned her own judgment, her trust in both Mark and Emma, and even her feelings about her marriage. She realized that the security she had relied upon for years had dulled into complacency, and that she had been avoiding emotional truths too long. The laughter, the spark, the closeness she saw, it wasn't betrayal. But it was awakening, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel. When the weekend came again, Lily decided she needed clarity. She arranged a quiet evening at home, cooking Mark's favorite meal, lighting candles, trying to create a sense of intimacy and safety. She wanted to speak with him, to understand his feelings, to bridge the silent gap that had formed. But before she could start the conversation, he said something she didn't expect. "Lily, I feel like there's something between me and Emma that I didn't see coming." Her heart stopped. The words were calm, almost casual, but their meaning hit like a wave. She listened carefully, her mind racing. Mark didn't speak of betrayal or desire. He spoke of unexpected connection, of curiosity and emotion he hadn't anticipated. It was delicate, human, and complicated. Not wrong, not cruel, but real. Lily realized then that the challenge wasn't about punishing anyone or claiming ownership. It was about understanding Mark, understanding Emma, and most importantly, understanding herself. She felt fear, yes, but also a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, she confronted the reality she had been avoiding. Love and friendship weren't always neat. They were messy, emotional, unpredictable. That night, she made a decision not to act impulsively, not to judge, but to observe, to reflect, and to prepare herself for honest conversations. She would confront her feelings, and she would confront the reality of the three hearts involved, her own, Mark's and Emma's. It was terrifying, but it was necessary. As she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, she whispered to herself, "I have no idea what happens next, but I need to see it for all of us." The tension hung in the air, thick and unresolved. Lily knew the next step would change everything: their relationships, her understanding of love, and perhaps even her own identity. She didn't know whether the story would end in heartbreak, reconciliation, or revelation, but she knew that she could no longer hide, ignore, or pretend. And so, the first part of her journey ended with uncertainty, with suspense, and with the quiet realization that sometimes the hardest decisions are about trust, honesty, and the courage to face emotions head-on. Cliffhanger. Lily must confront the evolving dynamic between her best friend and her husband. The next part will reveal truths, emotions, and unexpected twists. The next morning felt heavier than usual. Lily woke before sunrise, staring at the pale light slipping through the curtains. Mark was still asleep beside her, breathing steady, unaware of the storm brewing inside her. His words from the night before echoed in her mind. "I feel like there's something between me and Emma." It wasn't anger she felt, it was confusion. She wasn't ready to lose him, but she wasn't sure she wanted to fight for him either. She sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold long before she realized it. Her thoughts were tangled. Part of her wanted to confront Emma, demand honesty, and end this strange tension. Another part of her wanted to see where this would go, as if she were watching her own life unfold like a movie she couldn't pause. Emma texted her that afternoon, "Hey, can we talk? It's important." Lily's heart raced. The message was simple, but she knew what it meant. Emma wanted to talk about Mark. She agreed to meet her at their usual cafe, a small, quiet place they'd been going to for years. When Lily arrived, Emma was already there, dressed casually, her eyes soft but anxious. They hugged, though the embrace felt awkward to people pretending everything was normal. Emma spoke first. "Lily, I don't know how to start this." "I think you already know." Lily nodded slowly, staring into her untouched cup. "You and Mark," she said quietly. "There's something there, isn't there?" Emma hesitated, then nodded. "I didn't plan it. I swear. We just connected. It surprised me as much as it did you." Lily's heart ached, not from betrayal, but from the realization that she had seen it coming. She could sense the sincerity in Emma's tone, the conflict in her voice. This wasn't a confession of guilt, it was confusion, just like her own. "I need to ask," Lily said softly. "Did anything happen?" Emma shook her head quickly. "No, not like that. But we've talked. A lot. About you, about life, about how we've all changed. It's emotional, not physical." Lily felt a strange relief. Nothing had gone too far yet. But she also knew that emotional intimacy could be even more powerful, sometimes more dangerous than anything physical. She leaned back, exhaling deeply. "I could be angry," Lily said, her tone calm but firm. "But I'm not. Maybe because I think I understand." Emma's eyes widened slightly. "You do?" Lily nodded. "I've been distant, even with myself. I don't know what I want anymore. Maybe you and Mark found something real. Or maybe it's just a mirror of what's missing in both of us." For a moment, neither spoke. The cafe buzzed quietly around them, but it felt like the world had shrunk to their table, two women once inseparable, now tied together by something they never imagined. Lily's words surprised even herself. She didn't sound jealous or defeated. She sounded curious. A strange calm washed over her, the calm that comes when you stop fighting the truth. Emma reached across the table, her voice trembling. "Lily, I don't want to hurt you. I never meant to. I love you. You're my best friend." "I know," Lily said softly. "That's why I'm not going to stop you." Emma blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Lily met her gaze steadily. "If you really feel something for him, I want you to explore it. I want to see what happens when I step back. Maybe it'll help all of us see things clearly." Kama froze. "You're letting me?" Lily interrupted, her voice firm but strangely peaceful. "I'm not letting anyone do anything. I'm just not standing in the way. Maybe I need to see who Mark really is, and who I really am without him." The words hung between them like a fragile truth. Emma didn't respond immediately, her face pale, eyes searching for any sign of sarcasm or anger. But there was none. Lily meant it. That night, Lily told Mark about her conversation with Emma. He listened in stunned silence, his face a mix of disbelief and guilt. "She told you everything?" he asked quietly. "She did," Lily said. "And I told her she could see you if that's what you both want." Mark looked shocked. "You're serious?" "I am," she said calmly. "But I need you to be honest with yourself. Don't do this to test me or to prove something. Do it because you think there's something worth finding out." Mark ran a hand through his hair, speechless. "Lily, I don't want to lose you. You might already have," she said softly. but maybe this is the only way to know." He didn't argue. He didn't promise or plead. He simply nodded, a quiet, uncertain nod that broke her heart more than any fight could have in the days that followed. Lily tried to keep herself busy. She threw herself into work, spent more time with her coworkers, and rediscovered small joys she had long ignored. Morning walks, coffee by herself, journaling. She realized she had spent so much of her life caring for others that she'd forgotten how to care for herself. But at night, the silence of her apartment felt unbearable. The thought of Mark and Emma together haunted her, not because of what they might be doing, but because she wasn't part of it. She imagined them talking, laughing, maybe even realizing what she had already suspected, that sometimes love shifts its shape and finds new forms. 2 weeks later, Emma called. Her voice was gentle but heavy. "Lily, can we talk?" They met again at the same cafe. Emma looked tired, her confidence dimmed. "I thought this would feel right," she said, eyes downcast. "But it doesn't. It's not what I imagined." Lily's chest tightened. "What happened?" Emma sighed. "Mark's a good man, kind, but everything feels off. It's like we're both trying to fill an emptiness that isn't supposed to be filled by each other." Lily nodded slowly. She wasn't surprised. She had sensed it from the start. What Mark and Emma shared was real in emotion, but incomplete in depth. It wasn't love. It was reflection, two people seeing their loneliness in each other. Then Emma looked up, her voice breaking. "I think he misses you, Lily. He talks about you all the time." Lily smiled faintly, tears forming. Maybe we all needed to get lost to find our way back. Later that night, Mark came home unexpectedly. His eyes were tired but honest. "I saw Emma today," he said quietly. "She told me you knew everything." "I did," Lily replied. He nodded, then took a deep breath. "Lily, I was wrong. What I felt with her, it wasn't what I thought. I kept waiting for it to make sense, but it never did. All it did was make me realize how much I took you for granted." Lily looked at him carefully. "And what do you want now?" "I want to start over," he said softly. Lily didn't sleep that night. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning with every word Mark had said. He hadn't confessed love or guilt-only confusion. That was somehow worse. It meant there were feelings simmering under the surface, unspoken but powerful enough to change everything. By morning, Lily knew one thing: silence would destroy them faster than truth. She needed to face both Mark and Emma, even if it broke her heart. The next day, Lily called Emma. Her voice was calm, but her heart raced. "Can we talk?" "Just the two of us," she asked. Emma hesitated for a moment before agreeing. They met that afternoon at a small cafe they had both loved since college. It used to be their escape spot, filled with laughter and shared secrets. But today, it felt colder. Heavier. Emma arrived, looking nervous but composed. Her usual confidence seemed dimmed, her eyes avoiding Lily's at first. "I know why you asked me here," Emma began softly. "And before you say anything, I need to tell you I never meant for things to get complicated." Lily nodded, folding her hands around her coffee cup. "I believe you. But things are complicated. I need to understand what's happening between you and Mark. I need honesty." Emma took a deep breath, her eyes moistening. "It's not what you think. We haven't done anything wrong. But there's something. A connection, maybe. It started with simple talks about work, life, even you sometimes. He's been lonely, Lily, and I think I understood that loneliness because I've been feeling it too." The words stung, but Lily didn't interrupt. She wanted to hear the truth, no matter how painful it was. "I think we both found something we were missing," Emma continued, her voice trembling slightly. "It wasn't about attraction or wanting to hurt you. It was about feeling seen, understood. But when I realized it was crossing lines in my heart, I pulled back. I swear I did." Lily's chest tightened. Her best friend had admitted what she already suspected: emotional infidelity. A bond deeper than friendship, but not physical. It was betrayal, yes, but one wrapped in pain and sincerity. She stared at her cup, unable to speak for a long moment. Then, quietly, she said, "I don't hate you, Emma. I just don't know how to feel right now." Emma reached out, her hand trembling slightly. "I would never want to hurt you, Lily. You're like family to me. I made a mistake letting it get that far." Lily nodded slowly. "We both made mistakes," she said softly. "I saw it happening and didn't stop it. Maybe part of me was curious. Maybe I wanted to see how strong my marriage really was. But now I know it's not just about love. It's about effort, and I let that slip." There was silence between them for a while, heavy but honest. For the first time, there were no hidden feelings or polite pretenses. Just two women facing the truth. When Lily got home, she found Mark waiting at the kitchen table. He looked as if he hadn't slept either. "Emma told me you met her," he said quietly. "I needed to," Lily replied. "I wanted to hear her side before we talk." Mark nodded slowly. "I deserve that." Lily sat down across from him. "Mark, I need to know something. Did you fall in love with her?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Mark looked down at his hands, struggling to find the right words. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "I care about her, but not the way I care about you. It was more about escaping something. I felt seen by her in ways I hadn't felt in a long time. But it wasn't real. It was built on what we were both missing." Lily's throat tightened, tears threatening to spill. "So what are we missing, Mark? Because I feel like we've both been standing in the same room watching our marriage fade away, pretending everything's fine." Mark leaned forward, his voice breaking slightly. "We stopped trying. I stopped making you feel loved, and you stopped letting me in. I thought maybe this distance was just what marriage turns into after years together. But now I know it doesn't have to be." Lily looked at him, searching his eyes for sincerity. She saw pain, regret, but also something else, hope. It wasn't too late if they both wanted to rebuild. After a long pause, Lily said, "Then we start over. Not as who we were, but as who we are now. But this time, no secrets. No avoiding what hurts." Mark nodded, relief and sorrow mingling in his expression. "I want that. I'll do whatever it takes." They spent the evening really talking for the first time in months. About their fears, their mistakes, their unspoken disappointments. Lily realized how much both of them had changed over the years, but had never adjusted their relationship to match. They had been trying to love each other the same way they did in their 20s, without realizing they were now different people. Days turned into weeks. Things didn't magically heal, but small signs of change began to appear. Mark left notes for her in the mornings again. Lily cooked dinner and asked about his day. Not out of duty, but genuine curiosity. They attended counseling, something Lily once would have rejected out of pride. And slowly the walls began to crumble. Emma, meanwhile, kept her distance. She sent a brief message weeks later. "I'm giving you both space. I truly hope you find your way back to each other." It was the last message Lily received from her for a long time. Months passed and life found a rhythm again. One chilly autumn morning, Lily walked through the park where she and Emma used to meet for coffee. The leaves had turned shades of gold and red, swirling around her feet. She sat on a bench, thinking about how different life looked now. She had lost her best friend, but regained her marriage rebuilt not from perfection, but from truth. Mark joined her, sitting quietly beside her. "You okay?" he asked softly. Lily smiled faintly. "I'm getting there. It's strange. I thought forgiving you would be the hardest part. But forgiving myself took longer." Mark nodded. "I've been doing the same." They sat in silence, watching the leaves fall. For the first time in a long while. The silence between them felt peaceful instead of heavy. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, Lily received a message from Emma. Her heart skipped when she saw the name, but she opened it anyway. It simply read, "Thank you for being the kind of person who didn't turn hate into revenge. You deserve happiness, Lily. I hope one day we can talk again." Lily stared at the message for a long time, then put her phone down. She didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because she didn't need to. Some chapters weren't meant to be reopened. They were meant to be learned from. as the weeks turned into months. The memory of that complicated triangle softened into something less painful, almost bittersweet. It had been a storm that tore her life apart but also cleared the air for something stronger to grow. She had learned that love wasn't about ownership or perfection, it was about forgiveness, growth, and courage. One evening, while watching the sunset with Mark, Lily whispered, "You know, if someone told me a year ago that I'd forgive both of you, I would have laughed." Mark smiled gently. "I wouldn't have believed it either." She leaned against him, feeling the warmth of his shoulder. "But I guess that's what love really is, choosing to stay when it's easier to walk away." Mark nodded, squeezing her hand. "And choosing to be honest when it's easier to hide." Lily smiled, her eyes glistening in the soft light. For the first time, she didn't feel uncertain about the future. She knew it would have challenges, but she also knew they could face them together. The story didn't end in perfect happiness, it ended in understanding. The kind of understanding that comes only from pain, forgiveness, and growth. Lily had loved, lost, and found herself again in the process, and sometimes she thought, that's what life is really about. Not the people you keep or the ones you lose, but the person you become because of them.